after writing Eternal Undying Love and also writing some other books out there, I got the idea of going back into another kind of horror genre and fantasy, but also mixed with kind of detective and science fiction type of content. That's where I came up with Afterlife Simulation. And that's the one that a lot of people keep on asking me about. I've noticed on Amazon, there's a lot of people who have been buying that book, but they don't feel like the description or the summary gives them a real handle or idea of what the book is about, which is why I'm here to describe it today. So, believe it or not, Atheist gave me a lot of inspiration on this book. You see, during this time, I called myself an atheist historian, and I looked into a lot of things that atheists and scientists were involved in historically and in the past. And there was this thing I came across where it said that Nazis as well as Stalin were doing experiments. And one of their experiments was called the Humanzee. Stalin was convinced that if you genetically spliced or manipulated the genes of a chimpanzee or a monkey, ape, or any kind of creature that's in the primate family, that he would be able to construct with human DNA, as well as believing that because it's a common ancestor, that he would be able to make super soldiers out of humans by genetically editing their genes in, and also vice versa. So my book goes on to tell you about these creatures that are called Humanzees, who find themselves experimented on. They're created, and of course the rest of the world doesn't know anything about them, and the entire point of their existence is to be bred for war against America. The Nazis and Stalin are doing this, and they're going to use these experiments to try to hurt America and all the countries that oppose them. Well, they build an extremely brutal creature that is supposed to be great in the war field, basically a straight-up warmonger that has wolf blood in it, as well as all kinds of other genes spliced into it, taking upon the traits of the different creatures and animals. I know what some people are going to say, but Brett, you're always questioning evolution. Sure I do. Sure I do. But it's a fictional novel, right? And you can have fun with science, and you can have fun with religious aspects, and really create some very inspiring stories based upon actual facts and evidence that happened in history. Sorry, folks, I was drinking soda earlier, so I got the burps going on there. Sorry about that. So we've got the Humanzees, we've got these experimental creatures, and obviously, as most people know historically, Stalin ended up losing the war. Hitler lost the war. So therefore, after all the devastation and destruction, the scientists were basically in hiding. A lot of them were killed, either by Hitler and the Nazis themselves, or they were hit by, frags and debris and whatever destruction happened whenever war is going on. This basically opens up the base that these Humanzees live in, and they ended up going out into the world. Now, some of you out there are probably wondering, well, what is the religious aspect of it? In the summary, it mentions a lot of religious aspects. That's the science part of it, about these Humanzees cutting loose. Well, what happens is, in the story, the religious aspect is that the Nazis decided to use a couple Catholic priests. All of them died except for one. They used the genetics of a human in order to be able to, the idea was to splice these genes together of a priest, a human priest, and then put the materials into a woman, not VI sex, but through genetic editing, causing the birth of a child that would have the animal traits as well as that, which would create a humanity. Okay, so what we have here is we have a priest who, even though he wasn't endorsing or supporting the experiments, this man of God felt it was his responsibility and his obligation to take care of one of the young ones, one of the children of Humanzes, the wolf-like creature, the creature that was very human-looking, but if it raged out, it would take upon the components of that of a creature. And that creature's name is Isaac, and then the priest's name was Abraham. Very biblical, right? Very biblical. The Father and the Son and the sacrifice kind of concept. All right, so we've got a priest who's trying to get out of the country with a Humanzi. Nobody knows about these creatures. Obvious, if they were witnessed or observed by a humanity, they would probably be hunted and killed, because that's what humans do when they fear things. When they fear the unknown, they try to destroy it, or they try to refute it, or basically make it to where it never even existed. So these creatures are trying to get accepted in society, and some of them realize that'll never happen, so they stay hidden, and the priest continues to take care of what he believes to be a son because it shares his genes. The story also has a human element to it as well, besides this human priest who is having a big dilemma between how he views God and if he wonders if his own son even has a soul or not. He wonders to himself, are these creatures an abomination, or are they a gift from God type of thing? The story with the human element is, it goes on to telling you about a mother and her daughter. The woman's name is Grace. She's lost her daughter, not her daughter, but her husband. And these two people are basically dealing with a tragedy and a loss. The daughter's very alone. She's very introverted. She has a hard time fitting in with kids her age, or anybody for that matter. And she ends up meeting with one of these Humanzes and decides to take upon it as a friend. But the whole time you're given the idea that this Humanzi could be dangerous, because sometimes it can't control itself. It can't control its own traits. Once it kind of angers up or it gets rageful, kind of Incredible Hulk-like, I guess, if I had to give a silly example. And basically, one of the other things that is very nerve-wracking about the story is that the daughter and the woman, the mother, are convinced that although Isaac seems friendly to them, they keep hearing reports on the news about serial killings that are going down, destruction and death. Remember, the Humanzi was originally bred for war by the Nazis and the Stalinists. So they're in a dilemma. Do they want to continue to be friends with this thing? Does it pose a danger to them? Should they continue to care for it? It's done nothing wrong back to them. While all this is going around, the priest has finally made his way over into the country with the Humanzes that he's got with them, and he's trying to locate all of them and where they went. He doesn't want them exposed. Well, I'll be honest with you folks, if I give you too much more of the story, I'm going to blow it for you. I'd spoil it. But let's just say it's really neat. The people who have read it so far, they've been really good about messaging me and sending comments and things like that and saying, Brett, this is really, really special. This is a very interesting story, the way it all plays out. Apparently, there's a lot of people who identify with these Humanzes, as well as these people, the human element, who've had a lot of loss and tragedy in their life. And you're wondering, at some point in time, is it going to impact the world in a big way? But it's very emotional, very involved. A lot of one thing that's very important to me whenever I write a book or a story is that I want to make sure that my characters have huge buildups. I want to make sure that whenever you're reading about them and you're listening to them, that you actually feel as though they're real. And I also wanted to make sure, because I know whenever I was a kid and I was writing books, a lot of the stuff was extremely unrealistic. A lot of stuff you wouldn't believe possible. It was extremely super fantasy. But this is more science fiction, and I tried to be as realistic as possible and only write things that you believe could possibly happen. And that's what makes it terrifying. It's what makes it scary, is because the more you read the book, the more you realize that something like this could actually be going on for real, or could actually happen in the future. So, yeah. So I hope that that's an in-depth enough summary of it without blowing the book or the whole story about it.